Have you ever noticed that sometimes the moment things start working, things also start breaking? You finally get the opportunity you prayed for. The door opens, the momentum begins, the response is bigger than expected. And instead of feeling excited, you feel overwhelmed. Your, cal- your calendar fills up, your responsibilities multiply. People are pulling on your time, your energy, your attention, and suddenly the very thing that you prayed for starts to feel heavy. And this is one of the most misunderstood moments in the journey of divine acceleration. Most people think the problem is speed. They think life is moving too fast, but speed is rarely the real issue. Capacity is. Acceleration doesn't break people. Insufficient capacity does. Hi, if you're new to me, my name is Raquel, and I'm your GPS for success. Let's get started. In this season, we've been talking about divine acceleration, not hustle, not grinding harder, but removing the drag that stretches 5 years into 5,000 small delays. We've talked about emotional drag, decision loops, procrastination disguised as protection, the power of shrinking your goals, and the momentum that comes from consistent focus and repetition. But now we arrive at a turning point because once momentum begins, something new happens. Your life begins to expand. More opportunity, more responsibility, more visibility, more influence, more movement. And if your inner capacity hasn't grown with your outer expansion, success itself can begin to feel unsafe. And that's why some people unconsciously sabotage the very breakthroughs they were asking God for. Not because they're lazy, not because they lack discipline, but because their nervous system does not yet feel safe holding the level of life that they're stepping into. Your body is always asking one question: is this safe to sustain? Neuroscience calls this regulation. Your nervous system constantly monitors whether the current environment feels stable enough to maintain. And if things become too chaotic, too uncertain, too demanding, the brain will attempt to restore balance by slowing things down. And sometimes that slowing down, it'll show up as procrastination. Sometimes it shows up as exhaustion. Sometimes it shows up as distraction. And sometimes it shows up as what looks like self sabotage. But the brain is not trying to destroy your life, it's trying to protect equilibrium. Spiritually, scripture has been pointing to this principle long before neuroscience gave it language. Jesus once said something fascinating in Luke 16:10. Whoever is faithful in little will also be faithful in much. Many people interpret that verse as a test of obedience, but there's another dimension to it. Faithfulness increases capacity. Handling something well grows your ability to handle more. This is not just a moral lesson, it's a developmental one. God does not pour a flood into a cup that has not yet been strengthened to hold it. Proverbs 4:23 tells us, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. I like one translation, it says, out of it comes the issue, the boundaries, the limitations of your life. Your heart in biblical language is not just emotion, it's the control center of your life. Your thoughts, your focus, your emotional regulation, your identity, everything flows from that internal system. And when that internal system is stable, something powerful begins to happen. Your life can expand without collapsing. You can move faster without breaking. You can grow bigger without burning out. But if the inner system is fragile, expansion becomes dangerous. Think of it like a bridge, right? A bridge isn't judged by how beautiful it looks, it's judged by what it can carry. The strength of the structure determines the weight it can hold. And the same principle applies to the human life. What you can carry determines how fast you can move. If the structure is weak, the load must stay small. If the structure grows stronger, the load can increase. And this is where many people get confused. They pray for acceleration, right? They pray for opportunity. They pray for doors to open. But what they actually need is increased capacity, because speed without capacity leads to collapse. But speed with capacity leads to multiplication. And throughout scripture, we see this pattern repeated again and again. Joseph did not move from prison to governing Egypt overnight because he had a dream. He moved there because his capacity had been built in the hidden seasons. David was not placed on the throne the moment that he was anointed. Years passed where his internal strength was formed. Character, leadership, emotional endurance, spiritual alignment. Those hidden seasons were not delays, they were capacity training. Because when expansion arrives, what matters most is not how quickly you got there. What matters is where you can hold it. And that's where we're going today. We're going to talk about what it means to increase your capacity so that success becomes something that you can sustain, not something that overwhelms you. Because acceleration without collapse requires something deeper than motivation. It requires a life strong enough to hold what God is bringing into it. So let's talk about something most people never say out loud. Sometimes the very thing you prayed for is the thing that exposes your capacity limits. You ask God for more influence, then more people start paying attention to you. You ask God for a bigger opportunity, and then responsibility grows faster than expected. You ask God for financial increase, and then suddenly you're managing decisions, pressures, and expectations you never had before. And what happens next surprises people. Instead of celebrating the breakthrough, they feel tension. Their mind, it gets noisy. Their energy gets scattered. Their focus gets thin. And they start wondering, what's wrong with me? Nothing. Nothing is wrong with you. Your capacity is simply catching up to your expansion. This is one of the reasons some people unconsciously slow down when things begin to work. It's not laziness, it's regulation. Your nervous system is trying to stabilize the new level of life. In neuroscience, there's a concept called elastic overload. And so it refers to the total amount of stress your system is carrying while adapting to change. Now, here's the interesting part. Positive change can create the same stress response as negative change. A promotion, a business opportunity, a sudden increase in visibility, a financial breakthrough, even answered prayers can activate pressure inside the nervous system. Your brain has one primary job. It wants to maintain stability. So when life suddenly expands, the brain sometimes interprets it as instability, and the body begins looking for ways to restore balance. And this is why some people procrastinate right after success. They might even get sick and suddenly not feel well. They start to overthink. They might feel like, you know, really tired when the momentum starts. And it's not because they're incapable. It's because the system is adjusting to a new level of responsibility. Scripture actually reflects this principle beautifully. In Isaiah 54:2, we read, enlarge the place of your tent, stretch your tent curtains wide, do not hold back. Lengthen your cords, strengthen your stakes. But notice the order: expansion, then strengthening. God tells the people to widen the tent. Yes, it's like the expectation, right? But he also tells them to strengthen the stakes. Why? Because if the structure underneath isn't reinforced, the larger tent is going to collapse. This is the spiritual principle of capacity. Enlarge, then reinforce. Expand, then stabilize. Increase, then strengthen. And if we skip the strengthening part, expansion becomes exhausting. You've probably seen this play out in real life, right? Someone builds a business quickly, but they haven't built the systems to hold it. Someone grows a platform fast, but they haven't developed the emotional resilience to handle criticism. Someone experiences financial increase, but they haven't developed the stewardship to manage it. And suddenly, what should feel like blessing begins to feel like pressure. The problem was not the opportunity. The problem was structural capacity. So think of it this way: speed multiplies whatever structure already exists. If your emotional regulation is strong, speed multiplies productivity. If your attention is disciplined, speed multiplies results. If your identity is stable, speed multiplies impact. But if the structure underneath is fragile, speed multiplies chaos. This is why some people burn out when their life finally starts moving. The success did not destroy them. The structure underneath wasn't ready yet. And the beautiful thing about this is that capacity is trainable. It's not something that you're born with, it's something that you build. So just like muscles, right? They get stronger under the right stress. Your emotional and mental capacity grows under the right conditions. You become someone who can hold more responsibility, more opportunity, more success, more influence, more movement. And the goal is not simply to move fast. The goal is to move fast without losing your peace. That's where divine acceleration becomes sustainable. Jesus actually modeled this beautifully and perfectly, right? When you read the Gospels, you'll notice something fascinating about his life. His influence was enormous. Crowds followed him everywhere. People were constantly pulling on his time, his energy, and his attention. Yet scripture repeatedly shows him withdrawing to quiet places to pray. Luke 5:16 says, "But Jesus also withdrew to lonely places and prayed." Why? Because capacity requires renewal. Even the Son of God created space to regulate his spirit and remain aligned with the Father. He was not rushing from demand to demand. He was anchoring himself before stepping back into the work. And that's emotional and spiritual regulation long before neuroscience gave us the language for it. He built capacity. And because of that, his mission moved with incredible speed. 3 years. That's all it was. And that's all his public ministry lasted. Yet the impact of those 3 years reshaped history. And that's what happens when capacity and calling they align. Acceleration without collapse becomes possible. And that's exactly what we're going to build in the second half of today's conversation. Because success would never feel like something you have to survive. It should feel like something you're strong enough to sustain. So I'll see you on the other side of this short break.
Thank you for watching Prospera TV Network. We hope you're enjoying the show. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Prospera TV provides a platform for independent voices, professionals, and thought leaders to share their insights, experiences, and perspectives. The views and opinions expressed by hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Prospera TV Network, Show Your Crown Enterprises, or its affiliates. Content shared within this program is intended for informational, educational, and inspirational purposes. While some hosts and guests may be professionals or subject matter experts, the information presented is general in nature and should not replace personalized advice from qualified professionals regarding your individual circumstances. By viewing this program, you acknowledge that any decisions or actions taken based on the content are your own responsibility.
Voices rising, faith igniting, truth speaking. This is Breakthrough Radio. Somewhere tonight, our heart is searching, looking for light through the noise. One message can change a direction, one word can awaken a voice. Every story carries a purpose, every step can open the door. And when truth starts filling the airways, you realize you were made for more. Renew your mind, lift your eyes. There's a reason you're hearing this now. Breakthrough Radio, where faith and purpose rise. Voices speaking life into the night. Breakthrough Radio, where hearts begin to grow. And the truth you hear can change your life. Turn it up. Let it play. Leadership rising from ashes, dreams that were buried now breathe. Hope moving through every frequency, calling the future you see. You don't have to stay where you started, you don't have to stay who you were. Every break sound, purpose rising all around, voices waking, dreams on fire, breakthrough moments taking you higher. This is the place where futures begin, where truth hits the airwaves, the breakthrough begins. Woo! This is Breakthrough Radio. Breakthrough Radio, where faith and purpose rise. Voices speaking life into the night. Breakthrough Radio, where hearts begin to grow. And the truth you hear can change your life. Turn it up. Let it play. Break starts today.
Welcome back. Let's go deeper into something that quietly determines whether acceleration becomes sustainable or overwhelming. Your capacity is not just about time management, it's about nervous system regulation, emotional stability, and spiritual alignment. In other words, it's about the internal environment that holds your life together while everything around you expands. Most people assume that when life speeds up, they simply need better systems, more discipline, stronger motivation. But the real issue is usually internal bandwidth. Think about a computer for a moment. You can install incredible software. You can open powerful programs. You can attempt to run complex processes. But if the machine doesn't have enough memory or processing capacity, what happens? We've all have experienced this. Everything slows down or, yes, crashes. The same principle applies to the human mind and body. When too many demands hit a system that has not developed capacity, the brain moves into survivor mode. And survivor mode narrows your ability to think clearly. Your focus, right, it shrinks. Your patience, it shortens. Your emotional tolerance, what happens? Right down, right? It drops. Neuroscience describes this through the interaction between two parts of the brain. Your prefrontal cortex, right? That's the part responsible for decision making, your planning, and long term thinking. Think of it like your strategist. And then your amygdala, that's the alarm system that is responsible for detecting threats and activating stress responses. When your nervous system feels regulated and safe, your prefrontal cortex leads, right? Then your strategist can lead. You can think strategically, you can make wise choices, you can stay focused on long term outcomes. But when the system becomes overwhelmed, the amygdala takes control. The brain shifts into protection mode, right? Fight, flight, freeze, or sometimes what looks like avoidance or procrastination. And then suddenly you find yourself reacting instead of leading. And that's where people begin to feel like success is slipping through their fingers, not because the opportunity disappeared, but because their internal regulation could not hold the expansion. Scripture describes this concept in a very powerful way in Proverbs 25:28. Like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self control. Think about the imagery there. A city without walls cannot regulate what enters. Anything can flood in, right? Chaos, attack, disruption. The walls were not there to limit the city, they were there to protect its capacity to function. In the same way, emotional regulation protects the internal structure of your life. It allows you to hold more responsibility without losing your center. It allows you to lead without becoming reactive. It allows you to expand without collapsing. And here's something fascinating. Many people think emotional regulation means suppressing emotion. It does not. It means processing emotion without letting it drive the entire system. Jesus modeled this beautifully. He felt deeply. He experienced grief. He experienced compassion. He experienced righteous anger, right? But his emotions did not control his direction. His inner alignment stayed intact. And because of that, his life moved with incredible clarity. The Apostle Paul speaks about this in, or something similar to it, in 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a well-disciplined mind. And that phrase, sometimes it's translated as sound mind, in the original language carries the meaning of self-regulation, disciplined thinking, and internal stability. not frantic thinking, not emotional chaos, but a mind that can remain steady under pressure. That kind of stability creates capacity. It allows someone to handle growth without becoming overwhelmed, to handle visibility without becoming anxious, to handle responsibility without losing peace. And here's the encouraging part: capacity does not grow in giant leaps, it grows in layers. So each time you learn to regulate your emotions in a stressful moment, your capacity actually increases. Each time you maintain focus when distractions appear, your capacity, it grows. Each time you carry responsibility without abandoning your peace, your internal structure strengthens. So over time, something powerful begins to happen. The life that once felt overwhelming becomes normal to your system. What once triggered stress becomes something you can handle with calm and clarity. And when that happens, acceleration becomes possible again, because speed only becomes dangerous when the system underneath is fragile. When the structure is strong, speed becomes an advantage. That's when opportunities no longer feel like pressure, they begin to feel like momentum. And in the final part of today's conversation, we're going to talk about what it looks like to intentionally grow this capacity so that when expansion arrives, because it will, your life is strong enough to hold it. So this question becomes, how do you actually increase capacity? Because if acceleration is coming, and I believe for many of you it is, the goal is not to slow down your life. The goal is to strengthen the structure that holds it. Capacity grows through three things: alignment, repetition, and recovery. First, alignment. Acceleration cannot be sustained when your life is constantly fighting itself. When your mind says one thing and your emotions are saying another, your schedule is saying something else, right? Your heart is also conflicted. Your identity is still questioning whether you deserve what you're building. That internal argument drains enormous energy. But when those pieces align, when your identity, your decisions, your actions, and your attention move in the same direction, something powerful happens. Energy stops leaking, momentum builds, speed becomes safe. This is one of the reasons we've been talking about daily execution throughout this series, not heroic bursts of motivation, not occasional surges of productivity, but consistent forward movement. Your nervous system learns safety through predictability. When you show up and execute daily, even in small ways, the brain begins to trust the process, and trust stabilizes capacity. So, the second thing, right? Repetition. Repetition is how the brain rewires itself. Every repeated action strengthens a neural pathway. Every repeated decision reinforces identity. Every repeated execution reduces resistance. So what once felt difficult begins to feel normal. What once required discipline becomes automatic. That's why consistency matters more than intensity. And we've seen this, right? When you're learning a new skill at a job, you're going to go slower. And the more you repeat it, the more you become an expert. And then you're not even thinking about it. You're just going into automatic. Same thing when you learn how to drive. So you've already experienced this particular thing. And now you're just trying to use it in the expansion that God is calling you to. 20 focused minutes every single day can rewire a life faster than emotional bursts of effort that disappear after 3 days. And actually, I call something the 1% solution, which is you're doing it for 1% of your day, which is 14 minutes and 40 seconds. So not even 20 minutes. You can actually just reframe it of, I'm going to do this for 1% of my day, because 1%, what does it sound like, right? Not that much, because it isn't. But if you're already saying yes to a lot of things, that can feel really, really heavy. So even using the reframe of, I can do this for 1% of my day, it is going to work. It is going to help you because there is a compound interest around that. Now, lastly here, recovery. This is the most important part that people ignore. Expansion requires restoration. You cannot carry greater responsibility if your system never resets. It needs to rest. Even in scripture, right? Rhythm is built into creation: work and rest, movement and stillness, action and renewal. When God created the world, he didn't simply work continuously. He established a rhythm of restoration, not because he was tired, but because sustainable life requires cycles of renewal. When your life includes alignment, repetition, and recovery, something begins to change internally. Your nervous system stabilizes, your focus sharpens, your emotional range widens. You become someone who can carry more without losing peace. And that is when acceleration stops feeling chaotic and begins feeling purposeful. This is exactly why the framework we built inside Task Animal matters so much. Task Animal is not about grinding harder, it's about creating a structure for daily execution that works with your brain instead of against it. Instead of waiting for motivation, you move through simple, repeatable action. And instead of trying to do everything, you focus on one task that actually moves your life forward. And over time, something incredible begins to happen. Momentum builds, resistance shrinks, and your capacity quietly expands. You become someone who executes daily, not because you're forced to, but because your identity has shifted. And that's when acceleration becomes natural. So if you want to explore the system more deeply, you can go ahead and visit taskanimal.net and learn how it works. It's designed to help you move from intention to execution without burning out. Because the goal is not just movement, the goal is sustainable movement, the kind of movement that compounds over time. And that leads us perfectly into where we're going next. Because once your capacity expands and your execution becomes consistent, something else begins to shape your reality in powerful ways. Your language, the words you repeat, the things you declare, the way you speak about your life, your future, and your identity. And next week, we're going to explore why language stabilizes identity, why declarations are different from empty affirmations, and how speaking from completion without fantasy or denial actually gives your brain neurological instructions for the life that you're building. Because your words are not just expressions of thought, they are instructions your mind begins organizing reality around. And when your capacity, your execution, your language align, acceleration becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Until next time, may God's richest and best be yours. Bye for now. Breakthrough.
This is your Prospera era, where dreams align with grace, abundance flows like rivers. You've stepped into your place. Rise, reign, and remember, you were born to shine. Welcome to your moment, Prospera, it's time.
We hope you enjoyed today's show on Prospera TV Network. Make it a point to visit us on YouTube and catch all your favorite shows anytime you want. Interested in hosting a show of your own? Or advertising your business on our network? Contact Elena Rodriguez.